Welcome everyone. We just finished the limited set review and now it's time for the real deal. Some of you asked me when it's time to draft. Now it's the time to draft. The real question might be when it is not time to draft. And the real answer is it's always time to draft. So we have to. What is the premier draft? Yes, today we're drafting premier draft Duskmourn House of Horror Alchemy, which is basically the regular Duskmourn draft with some bomb alchemy cards sprinkled it in. So, what are we hoping to open as a pack one, pick one? Probably a nice alchemy bomb, like a mythic. I would not be opposed to. So, what are we opening now? This pack has two rares. One is a regular Duskmourn set 1. It's an unidentified hovership, which is impressively good. This card is phenomenal. For 3 mana, you get a 2-2 flying vehicle that exiles probably your opponent's best creature, as opposed to a Gilded Ambusher. This card is fine. Actually, it's a 4-2 that trades for one of your opponent's creatures, but domes your opponent for some amount of damage in the meanwhile. And the choice will be between one of these two other relevant cards in the pack are Scorching Dragonfire, probably the best common in the entire set. This card is phenomenally good because it exiles, and exiling is very relevant in Duskmourn. There's also Glimmer Seeker, Nowhere to Run. A Scrabbling Skullcrab is actually a fine card, to be fair. An 0-3 that mills your opponent might seem unimpressive, but it's actually a really good card. So now we're getting past the Mythic. This card is an Outpost Siege reworked, so it's for 4 mana, you get an Enchantment Room that kind of draws you one more card each turn. So for 4 mana you do nothing, then each subsequent turn you get 2 cards per turn, but with the caveat that one of those you have to cast it right away immediately. But I think our pick will be the Split Skin Doll. You're never really wrong with Split Skin Doll. It's just a really good card. For 2 mana you get a 2-1 that draws in these cards, and then if you control a creature with power 2 or less, which is basically almost 90% of white creatures, you get to draw a card point. So this is Silvergill Adept. Notably, we're passing this good mythic. This is probably the best uncommon point in the set. Not just the best gold uncommon, the best uncommon point. Another Scorching Dragonfire. We're passing a really good red to our left. So, don't know which colors will be in apart from white. Now we are faced with the same choice: a really good white creature and some really good red cards. We have Unholy Heat, a really good uncommon, probably one of the very few ways to interact in the format for 1 mana. It's really cheap and it kills almost everything for 1 mana. With Delirium, it kills basically anything in the entire format. Later in the game, on turn 5 and turn 6, you have 6 damage for 1 mana. This card is phenomenal. There's also Painter Studio, really good room. In red, Glassworks. So we're passing a phenomenal red to our left. But for the time being, I am fine with cutting white and then see what else to do, which color to pair with white, since this card is really good and I really want to be in white. Now we see probably our second alchemy card. The first one is the Rakdos rare that we passed, but we are definitely just picking exercise. This is a shielded edict for each and every purpose, and there's not that much else. Notably, we're passing a Piggy Bank and Most Valuable Slayer, so we're passing a phenomenal red to our left. So I expect red to be completely cut on pack 2. We'll see. Stranger things have happened, but exercises are definitely the pick. This is a really good removal. For 2 mana you get to exile basically anything. a big creature, an artifact, an enchantment. It's so much more than a disenchant in this format, and it's not really being held back by it being a sorcery, since you don't really care about the speed of your removals in white, since most times you are the aggressor, so you're playing your removals at sorcery speed to clear out a blocker and push through damage with your creatures. Now, this pack, we have two medium white commons. If we have to diverge from our primary color, this is the time to do so. Not even diverge by this much. Shove Stomper is a white card. At the end, it's a multicolored one. It's an Orzhov card, but it's the best non-rare and mythic reanimation target in the whole set. So, and Split-Skin Doll also lends itself to Reanimator, to black-white reanimation stuff, since you get to draw and discard a fatty that you're reanimating on turn 5, so definitely good. And now Painter Studio, really good, coordinated clobbering. I don't really know what are my my opponents, my fellow drafters at the table doing to my right. The only thing I can state out of this pack is that blue is probably being cut. There are no blue cards. I might take either an Hardened Escort. This card is fine, even in black-white, since it gives a bonus on attack, but it's also a defensive creature. It's a 2/4 for 3, so it's a really good body on defense. We might take a coordinated clobbering, just in case we go green-white, and vehicles are always at a premium in green-white, since those tend to trigger survival, but I will take the black card, since this seems like a spot for Reanimator. Reanimator tends to be more open than not these days, since people figured out that Reanimator black-white doesn't really have that much of a win percentage, as a really low win percentage. As a matter of fact, it's in the bottom two color pairs in the whole set, according to 17 lands statistics. But Vile Mutilator, together with Shroud Stomper, is a really, really solid start for a Reanimator deck. So, tips to draft Reanimator. No, now there's Undead Sprinter though. But it might be a Rakdos Seat, this one. But Final Vengeance is good enough that we don't really want to stray away from our primary colors. Black-white is open enough that we will end up with enough playables as it stands. Final Vengeance, obviously, it's a really, really good common. For 1 mana, you get to exile a creature at the cost of sacrificing something, but we will have some sacrifice fodder in our deck. Now, Appendage Amalgam, I'm not that impressed by this card. It's playable, it's definitely playable. It's more playable in black-white since you surveilled one and you can surveil something, some good 7-drop to the graveyard that you're reanimating later in the game. Off note, Sporogenic Infection with Final Vengeance, it's a really good combo, since you get to play this card, make your opponent sacrifice something, and then you can sacrifice the Sporogenic Infection to the Final Vengeance. Now we have two Final Vengeances, and I'm taking this over the Fear of Immobility. Black-white doesn't really want many middle ground creatures. It either wants removals or big creatures. So a 4/4 that gains some tempo, it's not really what you want, and a second Final Vengeance, it's definitely what you want. Now we're gonna take Derelict Attic, because black-white definitely wants card advantage, and it's an enchantment room to sacrifice to our Final Vengeances. So this is a really, really good start for black-white. Now we can take this. Most Valuable Slayer is the best card in the pack, but we passed basically anything, everything in red, so I don't expect red to be open. So we might take this. Maybe end up with a leech, maybe not. It's not really what black-white wants. And now Cult Healer, black-white might want the life gain part, but it's not really all that great at triggering Eerie. And the 4/1 is fine. because it goes to the graveyard for value. Now, we have to make a decision. This card is busted. This card is phenomenal. A friend of mine uh, renamed this card Raigeki, which is a card out of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. This card is a 6/7 mana, destroy each and every one of your opponent's creatures. If we want to splash a color in our deck, we have to take this card. Now, maybe we go red-black after all, and we play this regardless. But this and a couple of Thermorphic Expanses is a really good splash. Other considerations for our deck? Nothing. Black-white doesn't want cheerleaders. This is an Alchemy card, it's really good, but it's not worth the splash. This is worth the splash, and there's not that much to say. Layla No Hope does nothing, don't even think about it. This card is good, but it's a cheerleader on steroids, as I have named this card in the limited set review, and Black-White doesn't really want cheerleaders, like, at all. There is obviously a power-crept version, but still, the concept of the card, Black-White doesn't really want to attack in the early turns. This seems pretty clearly, to me, an also Stick Twister pick. This card is really solid, even at face value, a 2/2 for 2, a life flinker 2/2 for 2, is what Black-White wants. Black-White just wants to survive to the later stages of the game, so this enables that game plan for you. It trades for 2 with your opponent's 2-drop, and maybe later in the game it has added delirium value. Now we have a fine 2-drop curve in this deck already. This card is really good, but it's Selesnya. It's only really good in Selesnya, and that's it. It's not worth the splash, definitely not in Black-White. And I am already planning to splash red. And thinking about splashing red, I might pick Scorching Dragonfire and splash this too. But I'm already flushed with removals, have 2 Final Vengeances, an Exercise, Sporogenic Infection, Unidentified Hovership, and Vile Mutilator also acts as a removal. So I will take this opportunity to get a nice duel with the intent to splash my Roller Crusher Ride. So now the same pick again. There's another Raucous Carnival. I will have 2 to splash the Roller Crusher Ride. Yes, but this dual land is not free. It's not free because we have 3 really good cards. The second Stick Twister, Seas for Slumber, and Final Vengeance. I'm not really all that high in, with Seas from Slumber, except in Black-White specifically, because Black-White is defensive, so it wants to stay back and destroy your opponent's tapped creatures. I don't really want a third Final Vengeances, but also Stick Twister is really great, and having access to a second copy. It also strengthens my Split Skin Dolls. I can go Stick Twister into Split Skin Doll on the 3rd turn, so really great, really great. Now, we are faced with another fine choice. Friendly Ghost is not really what Black-White wants. It doesn't want a mid-range creature that pushes damage. This is not what the deck is trying to do. We might pick a Mountain Cyclers, but fact is, we're never gonna cast this for 6 mana because it's double red. Our mana base will not be supporting this. And Undead Sprinter might have some value. I don't know if I'm gonna play this card or not, but I'm gonna push it over here. Now the pick is clearly Murder. It's exactly what this deck is gonna try to do. If Murder was not in the pack, I would have picked the Unsettling Twins, which is kinda fine in Black-White. For 4 mana you get a couple of 2/2s. But the Manifest Dread part is fine, because maybe you get to push to the graveyard a big creature that you're gonna reanimate later in the game, like the turn after, or 2 turns after. But Murder is obviously what we want here. This is a Cathartic Reunion, not really worth the splash. A 2/4 for 3 is fine. It's fine. This is a defensive creature that later in the game might help my Shroud Stompers to push through for damage and accumulate more and more card draw. So it's a fine pick. Now, what do we have here? This might be the Fear of Immobility pick, since I don't really want Popular Egotist. My sacrifice, uh, the sacrifice part of the deck is already stressed with Final Vengeances. I don't really want to add a 3-2 with little to no value to the deck, and I already have a Resurrected Cultist, so Fear of Immobility is a side grade, mostly an upgrade over the Fear of the Dark. Now there's a duel, but it's a wrong duel. I'm not playing any of those, so I might as well pick this. I'm gonna splash red, definitely. I don't think there's anything in blue in the third pack that might make me skew towards another color, but you never know. And now we pick the Cycler. The Cycler is fine. It's not your ideal reanimation target, those two are, but it's fine. And black-white is a color, it's a mana-intensive deck, so playing cycling always has value because you want more and more and more lands. What also has value in black-white? A 2-2 for 2 that cantrips. It trades for your opponent 2 drops, and then ensures that you hit your land drops later in the game. Now, what else is here? Random red cards we're not interested in. Random friendly bears that we're not interested in. And now we have a powerful blue mythic. we were we were asking ourselves, which blue card might I be splashing in this deck? And this is the answer. Abhorrent Oculus is a phenomenon. It's an outstanding mythic. It's a 5/5 flyer for 3 with an additional cost of exiling 6 cards from a graveyard. But this is a deck that generates graveyard, so that part is not really all that difficult to achieve. The cost is passing a Trapped in the Screen, which is really good in this deck. But we already have a Marquis Sewer. Maybe with a couple of Terramorphic Expanses, we can splash anything in this deck. Now, Enduring Friendship, it's a 2-1 for 2 in its colors. We are too far from ever casting this card, and it's not even worth a splash. So here the pick is rather easy. It's either Exercise or Trapped in the Screen. We already have an Exercise, so maybe this is a time to pick a Trapped in the Screen. But I think Exercise is better enough than Trapped in the Screen, and my curve is skewed towards 3 dropped. I don't really want. This is a mana curve consideration. I will pick 2 over a 3 just because it's cheaper. Maybe this deck wants Trapped in the Screen better, but in the end. Now, I want everything out of this pack. I want Nowhere to Run, I want the third Final Vengeance, I want Seize from Slumber, I want Keys to the House, because I want to splash this and this. Ideally one of the two, I don't know which one I will gonna splash, probably the Roller Crusher Ride, since this deck wants removals more than anything else, but Golden Sidekick it's broken. It's a 2-2 flying lifelink for 2 that pumps your creature in your hand perpetually, forever. This card is an 8-tier threat on turn 2. And it also enables my Split Kindles. This card is everything in this deck. Now, what do we have here? Really nothing that helps us. I don't want Friendly Ghost, like, at all. I'm not gonna pick this card and want a 2-4 flyer. I either want to go small to trade with my opponent's early aggression, or I want to go big in order to win the late game. And for that specific consideration, I'm gonna pick this. I don't know if I'm gonna play a second Derelict Attic or not, but we have to understand that we also have a couple of 2-2 flying lifelink creatures for 2. So, and this also gains life, and this also gains life. We have a really nice gain life sub-theme. So paying 2 to cast a divination that later in the game it's a sacrifice fodder for Final Vengeance it's starting to become a good deal in this deck. This is not worth the splash. This is a 3/1 ace. The turn it enters. It's an aggressive creature, and we don't want to be aggressive in our deck. So, and now we are faced with the choice of this or this. 3/1 usually is really good in reanimation shells, but we don't have any reanimation spells, like at all. We don't have Emerge from the Cocoon, Rite of the Moth, and etc. etc. So entombing a 7 drop is not really all that valuable. You know what is valuable? Innocuous Rat, because it enables Split Kindles and Final Vengeances, so it's exactly what this deck wants. Now we can take this opportunity to pick another basic Land Cycler to pair it up with our Plane Cycler, Swamp Cycler, we have both, and it's totally fine. I'm not really all that high on Winter's Intervention. I never want ever more than one copy in my black decks, so this is more than fine. I won't have many enchantments, as a matter of fact. No, I have 8. 8 is fine, and this also gains life. And we have a life gain sub-theme, so this might be the mid-range threat. It's a defensive creature that once in a game might gain 4 to 6 life, so it's fine. This deck wants Machete more than Glimmerlight. Glimmerlight is too small ball for this deck, so Machete it is. And we don't have any more additional fixing, so we have to make a choice. It's either Oculus or Roller Crusher Ride. We'll see about that later. Now this blank pick, and Seize from Slumber is phenomenal. Seize from Slumber out of the wheel is exactly what this deck wants. And now what do we have here? Nothing. I'll pick the Alchemy card just for collection purposes. And now we have nothing again. And the draft is finished. So, in order to visualize these decks, what I usually do is removing all of the cards and starting to build the deck brick by brick, as if it's a Lego composition, Lego. So now, what I really want in this deck? So what is the foundation of this deck? This deck is a Split Skin Doll / Stick Twister deck at its basis. So this is the foundation of this deck. I'm gonna play those four in any case. And it's also a golden sidekick deck. Also, I'm gonna want my 7 drops. So I want this and this. Those 7 cards, I'm gonna want them for sure. Then I will want this, the unidentified hovership for sure. Murder for sure. And then I will have Final Vengeances. But Final Vengeances wants me to add some sacrifice fodder in my deck. So I will add my 2 rooms that draw cards, and also I will add my Innocuous Rat, and also I will add my Sporogenic Infection as sacrifice fodder for my Final Vengeances. So those 15 cards I will want for sure. Then I want more removals, and more removals is Seize from Slumber and 2 exercises. And now we are at 18. So we want 5 more cards. Our early game is basically set. We have 3 cheap removals on 2 and 2 cheap removals on 1, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 really good uncommon creatures on 2. So this is the kind of configuration that wants me to ask myself, do I really want Winter's Intervention in this deck? And the answer is not really. I don't really want Winter's Intervention. What is Winter Intervention doing in this deck that other spells do not? Since we already have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 removals already, do I want one more that is situational? Like, this is not situational. This is not situational. This is kinda situational, but not really. What do I want? I want a mid-range threat. So, if I want a mid-range threat, I have a really good one in the Bloodsucker here to fill my 4 slot. Do I want a 5 job? Probably. But which is better between Fear of the Dark and Fear with Mobility? Probably it's Fear with Mobility. Because this has a better body and it attacks better because it gains menace and death touch. But this helps me stabilize the game, which is far more important than everything else. So, now we are at 20 cards. We have to include 3 more cards. Ideally, I want 1 Cycler, because I want to do something in my late game. Probably I don't want both, since I don't have any reanimation spells, like any. I got past none. Not Rite of the Mouth, not Emerge from the Cocoon, 0. Nada. So I probably just want 1, and if I have to make a choice, I'm gonna pick this, because it's a flyer. Now, notably, I want swamps more than plains, because I have murder. But I also have an unidentified hovership, so it's not that easy. But this is double black, and this is double black, so I definitely want swamps more than plains, but this is a flyer. And flyer tends to win limited games. And this is the 3rd and final fatty that I will add to my deck. Now we have 2 more cards to include in our deck. And what is the splash? This is a phenomenal card. But at the end of the day, it's 1 more removal in our deck that is flushed with removals. So maybe, and just maybe, having a threat that generates more threats, because this is a 5/5 flyers that generates a 2/2 for free each and every of my opponent's upkeeps, each and every one of my opponent's turns. So each turn cycle I get an additional 2/2 is really, really relevant. Now, my question is, because this comes at a cost, I am not just including 1 Marquis Ewer and call it a day and be fine with this. I have to include 1, maybe 2 basic islands. And at that point, a deck like this, which is really color intensive, because we have double black, double white, double black, double white, double black, and double white, it's a really, really high cost. And since my deck's power level is already high enough, like if my deck works, like I have a functional game, I draw my lands, I draw my spells, and I can execute my game plan fine enough, I don't really need the extra oomph that this card is giving me. I don't really need it, because this card comes at a real cost. Now, if this card was white or black, this card would have been in the deck, no questions asked. But it's not. So am I willing to pay this cost? And the answer is probably not, to be fair, because my mana base is not good enough. If this was another blue land, probably I would have played this card. Like 1-2 duels and a basic land and a basic island, and those are fine enough to include this. But as those stand, not really, since we already have some fine playables. Now, how many creatures do we have? 11? 11 creatures, but this is also a creature, so it's more like 12. I think I want a machete over anything else, because I have a 4, a hole on the 4 slot, and this also Manifest Dread, that in this deck is really good, because you get to not only have a creature with power 2 or less to enable the Splitkin Dolls, but also you can randomly flip a Shepherding Spirits or a Shroud Stomper later in the game you can flip up. So we are 1 card missing, and we have a choice of these. So let's see each and every card singularly to see which I want. Do I want another 6 drop? Probably not. Do I want Fear of the Dark? I already have Fear of Mobility. I don't want to play many 5s. I either want a 3 and 4s and 2s or 7s. Either or, and not a middle ground creature. Do I want Resurrected Cultist? How good is my deck at achieving a Delirium? It's probably kind of fine. We have many artifact creatures, many cheap artifact creatures that tend to go to the graveyard. We have Split Skin Dolls and Stick Twisters. Those cards tend to trade and provide the two types, artifact, both artifact and creature to the graveyard. And then we have sorceries and instants and enchantment creatures. So this deck is fine at providing Delirium. I expect the Delirium to be enabled by turn 5 or 6 in this deck. So this card is fine-ish. It's a 4-1 that trades with your opponent 2 or 3 drop, and then later in the game it's an additional threat that she can recur. But I don't really have any payoff for reanimating my creatures. I don't have the black room that generates 2/2 zombies every time a card is removed from a graveyard. So I think I will just include this card over the other 3 drops, because the 2/4 is a better defensive body. It's a better defensive body. It's a creature with power 2 or less for Split Skin Dolls, and this is not, and this is not. So we have to include this in mind. And as I said previously, it also enables a clean attack with a Shout Stomper, and clean attacks with Shout Stompers are really valuable because each and every time you attack with this card, you get to drain your opponent's life for 2 and draw a card. So if you can attack 2 or 3 times with this card, the game is basically over. You can move on to the next. So I will include this. And all things considered, this, in the end, is my final 17 with 9 swamps over 8 planes. Because of murder that I want to cast in the early game, and also because I have a plane cycler, so it's basically 9 and 9 in the end. We're playing 18 lands at the end of the day. It might seem strange to some of you. I'm leaving in my sideboard 2 incredibly pushed cards, like 2 phenomenal cards. The Roller Crusher Ride and Abhorrent Oculus are 2 phenomenal cards. So some of you might be thinking, but Kami, what are you doing? What is this? Why are you not playing those busted mythics? And that's fine. That's totally fine if you're asking yourselves those questions. Always be curious and always have a critical thinking. Not everything that I am saying right now is a truth that's coming out of the sky. So it's possible that I have to play either one of those, this or this, and not both at the same time, because then my mana base just an update is available. Yes, I will restart in no matter of time. So it is possible that I have to play one of those two, but you will know me well enough if you like and subscribe to my channel, if you will follow my future drafts. I really value consistent mana bases. Consistency is key. It's key in life, and it's key in Magic. If you can exert your game plan successfully with consistency, yeah, if you don't mull a lot of times, if you don't get clunky hands with uncastable spells, if you can play a regular game of Magic the Gathering, if you built your deck with an eye and respect for what the archetype is trying to achieve in this format, you're gonna win games. And you don't need a stellar power level. You don't need powerful game-changing, game-bending mythics. We already have really good uncommons. Like one of the perks of a Duskmourn draft, one of the things that make this set really good, is that uncommons are some uncommons particularly are at the power level of rares in other formats. This would have been a rare, and this would have been a rare in other limited formats. So you don't really need the extra oomph. So for those reasons, I'm not splashing for one of these. If you want to comment, if you want to comment, but Kami, what are you doing? This makes no sense. Feel free to do so. I will accept your comments. I will accept your critiques, and maybe we can both become better limited players for the foreseeing future and foreseeing limited events and tournaments. So I will be right back after I will have restarted Arena to start with this draft and see if we can make a solid, a good run with this deck. So